Hi, good morning. I'm just drinking coffee and enjoying this beautiful morning. I'm going to talk today about one of the reasons why it can be very, very difficult for survivors of narcissistic abuse or sociopathic relationships to deal with cognitive dissonance. That is a big issue that you have to be able to overcome in order to sort of get through the healing process. And really, cognitive dissonance is what you're faced with. Is if you were in a relationship with this person for, say, a very long time, it could have been 10. If you're with a covert narcissist or a high-level sociopath, it could have been 10, 20 years where you believed that this person was, an honest Boy Scout. They may have appeared to be very, with a high level of integrity. You thought that they were a good, decent person, and internally, there may have been some red flags of poor communication or, not good maybe the problems that, you couldn't, the arguments were circular and you couldn't quite get resolution. And maybe sometimes you walked away from the communication and you were like, what just happened there, right? The communication is always a problem with these people because under what they're really doing is they're manipulating you in the communication, but you probably are not aware of that. So the cognitive dissonance is this idea that your brain has to accept, and it's very, very hard on the brain because if you were with this person for 10 or 20 years, you thought they were Boy Scout, you thought they were ethical, you thought they were kind. And then the chasm between that and then the person that they turn out to be, when the mask comes off and you realize that this person has been, lying to you the whole time, duplicitous, cheating, manipulating, they've been gaslighting you, making you question your sanity and your reality. Like they, have been using all of these really maladaptive strategies to torture you basically, but you didn't even know it, right? Sorry, I have a little cold. Gaslighting is, you don't know what's happening. I mean, if you're a normal person, you just trust that what somebody says is the truth. You can't imagine that they're manipulating you into questioning your own sanity and your own reality. That is it's very difficult on the brain. but the cognitive dissonance is really hard because your brain has to accept, sort of come to terms with these two conflicting beliefs that are in your brain. One is that, I was with a good man that was ethical and honest and a really faithful person who was monogamous and kind and had a high level of integrity with, oh my gosh, I am with somebody who has, maybe has no conscience, doesn't seem to have any empathy, no remorse, no guilt, and they actually pretended that they loved me for many years, and they actually hate me. And they don't hate me because it's personal. They hate everyone who tries to get close to them, or even secretly, they even hate the people they pretend to like. So, of course, this person pretended to like you for all this time and actually pretended to love you, and they're not even capable of love, right? So, this sort of cognitive dissonance is really hard for the brain to accept and wrap your head around. So one thing that I think is really important is to get out of the fantasy and get into the reality. And one way you can do this is you can make a list of all of the things that they did. And this could have been during the discard phase. You may not have known that this was going on earlier during the idealization. And even during the devaluation, it can be very subtle. But during the discard phase or the devaluation phase, you write down a list of what they did. And usually it's going to be, stonewalling, silent treatment, manipulation, gaslighting. They were probably cheating. They had a pornography addiction. They may have been, just treating you like garbage. They may have started to demean you, criticize you, made you feel like nothing you could do was ever good enough. Write down the list of what they actually did. All those times when you tried to communicate with them like a normal human being, and you were met with, complete cold, refusal to communicate in a sincere manner. And they probably lied to your face on multiple occasions. Just write this down, because that is the reality. Look at that reality. And when your brain tries to sort of reconcile it with the person that you thought they were, you just have to accept that the person that they sent was a mask. That was a fake person. That was not real. Now that the relationship's over, that person's actually dead. That person never existed, because the new person that they're mirroring, their new source of supply, they're taking on that person's personality anyway. So the person that you thought you knew probably isn't even a real person, really, if you think about it. I mean, it's kind of weird to wrap your head around that, but that's like the reality. So that was love fraud. You were duped. You were duped. In a way, you're the fool, right? Which doesn't feel good to be the fool, but at the same time, you're normal. You trusted like a normal person. You can't, neurotypical cannot imagine having the brain of somebody with this pathology. They cannot imagine studying people, getting to know people so they can manipulate them. That's not what normal people do, right? So, they don't play spy games. That's what, these narcissists, these sociopaths, they're all into the game. They love to pretend or be like, they like to think that they're spies, right? So they get off on this. That's not what normal people do, right? Not at all. So, reconcile, get out of the fantasy, live in the reality that this person is pathological, and write down the list of what they did so you can get real clear on that pathological piece. And when you were in the relationship and when they were love bombing, that was strategic. It wasn't heartfelt. It didn't come from a place of emotion. It was purely as a form of manipulation. They were just using manipulation and love bombing to keep you hooked into their, sick, toxic dance. So, it wasn't real. I hate to break that fantasy for you, but it wasn't real. Now, the one thing that was real in it was you. Your love was real. Did you love a real person? No, you loved a hologram, and that sucks. But it doesn't mean that your love is any less real. Like, your love was real. Your job now is to heal the cognitive dissonance, come to terms with it, live in reality, and then heal the part of you that said in your brain that said that you weren't good enough. That's the part that let you stay in this relationship where the communication was weird and dishonest, if something was off about it, and you weren't being loved, like you weren't being properly respected. So, and if you look back, you'll probably see a lot of those pieces in there. So your job is to heal your, boundaries and start learning healthy boundaries and learn how to set them and stick to them and figure out what's going to work for you and what isn't. And don't waver on your boundaries. If you're with one of these pathological people, they will just run over your boundaries, manipulate the heck out of you, but they have no respect for other people's boundaries. They don't have good boundaries themselves. It's weird, but narcissists actually have boundary issues themselves. They don't have good boundaries themselves, and they certainly don't respect yours. So learn to set and stick to good, healthy boundaries. Start accepting that you are worthy, that you do not need to be perfect in order to be loved, and you are a valuable, you deserve to be loved, you deserve to be respected, you deserve to be treated with kindness and love and respect, and these people are not capable, and it has nothing to do with you. It's actually not personal. You were literally just in the crossfire. Like, you were in that toxic relationship because you chose to stay for portion of it, and you were also being totally manipulated to believe a fantasy rather than a reality. So really watch people. Do their actions match their words? If their actions don't match their words, they gotta go. And you'll see that with narcissists. Their actions never match their words. They could be like, yeah, I want to finish that house project. 9 years later, it's not done. Yeah, I want to have intimacy with you 3 or 4 times a week, but they're having sex with all sorts of other people, and the intimacy with you is like once every 2 months. Yes, I want to get married, or I want to be a life partner with you. I want to be a life partner with you. And then the reality is they don't do any work in the relationship to be a good partner. So if you look at that, you can see their actions. They don't match their words. Actions don't match their words. Stop listening to people's words to a certain degree. I would say, still listen because that's respectful, but watch their actions. What are their actions telling you? So from here on out, I'm watching people's actions, and I'm seeing how their actions are, not their words. With narcissists, these people, there's a huge gap between their words and their actions. And, know when you're being manipulated. And if you're not sure, get clarification and ask people, ask your therapist or your counselor, like, is this manipulative? And just start checking. I mean, that's where I started to work with my counselor a lot, and where I got a lot of clarity was when I started asking her, like, is this normal? Is this normal in a relationship? And she was like, no, that is not normal. That is not respectful. And when I started realizing that, I was like, oh, okay. Because, I grew up in a family with, dysfunctional boundaries and neglect. And so for me, and some abuse, for me, I was used to being neglected. So this egregious neglect that I had in the relationship with the narcissist, like, it felt sort of familiar to me. And just know that, when they're off romancing their new source of supply, they are literally going to do the same relationship pattern with that person. It may manifest slightly differently because, of course, they're sending, they're sending, the person they're sending to that relationship is that what's going, they're mirroring that person. So they're going to, they're going to change. Usually the narcissists, like, they will shed their old life often. They discard friends, their old friends, they discard their children or stepchildren, they discard their spouse. They literally, if they can get away with it, they'll move to another city. Like, they literally discard their old life and sort of, reinvent themselves. And you'll notice, this is something to notice with narcissists. Do they have long-term friendships that they've had their whole life, that they've stayed in touch with, that they're deeply and intimately connected with? Do they have at least one person that they are, that they tell their true feelings to and are they intimate with? Or are all their relationships shallow? That is something to look for. Are they all surface? Are they all shallow? If so, that is a red flag. That's how your relationship's going to be. If their relationship with their family is very surface, very shallow, notice that, because that's what you're going to be dealing with if you're in a relationship with these people. So I hope that helps a little bit, but the cognitive dissonance is something that you really have to work hard to overcome. The book by Jackson McKinsey called Whole Again, I think, does a great job of addressing some ways to heal from that and to come to terms with that, with the cognitive dissonance, and to get past it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.